Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I'm excited today to talk about a topic that many of my clients have been kind of working with, navigating, I would say, ever since I started coaching 20 years ago. But there's been a particular focus for some reason recently around external approval and validation, right? And what happens when we're seeking somebody else to tell us, oh, I'm good, or I'm okay, or this behavior is okay, or this, this desire that I have is okay. And so I'm excited to have a guest today to have this conversation with. And Kian Lagi, welcome. Thank you for being here so much.
Yeah, Shayna, thank you so much for having me. And you pronounced my name perfectly.
I
So
was like,
I'm very
no,
like
am I going to mess
you
it up
you
again?
you you crushed it. You absolutely crushed it. So thank you so much for being so intentional with saying my name the way that you did. It
Yes.
says measures about you,
Well, I
and
know
I'm
people
happy
say
to.
my name wrong all the time. So it's a good one. You actually said it right, which I didn't even have to correct you.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
heard you say it, so I had to make sure when you said it, I'm like locked in.
right.
So yeah,
Smart. This is
but I
good.
appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to go into some good conversation, especially in regard to validation with men and how to be able to solve it, because I think a lot of it has to do with our ever changing times and being able to keep up with it.
Ooh,
And
interesting.
so we're going to dive into that, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. And just, a little bit of background. I know you were headed toward a career, it's football, right? In football. And
Hmm.
then basically found out that you had a condition in your spine that you would likely be paralyzed. And so that dream evaporated in, I think, like a 24-hour period. And you've since gone on to work with people as a coach and, embrace emotional intelligence and all these things. So it's quite a journey. It's not one that, all men on this planet take. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity to play in the NFL, and then, like you said, I had that neck condition that was revealed in an MRI right before I got to play,
Yeah.
which ended my career as quickly as it started.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity, but then it got taken, and then since then it's been quite the journey into understanding myself at a much deeper level, separate from the identity of being the athlete, and
Yeah.
being able to really create the person that I want to be, separate from any kind of past expectations that anybody may have had of me, or the
Mm-hmm.
identities that I had currently or I previously embodied.
So powerful, those two words, identities and expectations, right? And it does speak to external validation and approval and that sense of who we think we need to be based on how we were raised or the culture or right. I imagine that was could have been a dark night of the soul, that moment of your dream being crushed.
Yeah, you know what was interesting is clearly that when I got the news, I cried my eyes out for sure.
Yeah.
But something that I've historically just been very good at, and I think resilience is just kind of built into me.
Hmm.
After 3 days of sitting around, I got bored, and I'm like, okay, well, what's next? And then I immediately
Wow.
got into what was next for me. So,
That's
to be honest with
fast.
you, yeah, it wasn't very catastrophic. I think there was actually part of my soul that was desiring greater expansion outside of that identity anyway.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually that difficult of a transition, despite
Wow.
what the general public's perception might be of the significance of it happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that does say something about your capacity for resilience or your soul's journey, right? That there was something that you stayed current with what was maybe wanting to happen or wanting to come through you, as opposed to like, oh, 3 days ago, there was, even 3 days ago versus last year, or there was a dream, there was a vision.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of it was just the pure acceptance of the reality of the situation.
Yeah. That's
It's like,
huge.
well, and it could be where I come from is I'm from South Dakota, so we're very much a put your head down and work and just handle things, and you just do things because you do them,
This
because
is
you
what's
just do it because
happening. This is what we
there's no
do.
other option.
Yeah.
So there's no other option. The career's done. What are you going to do? Just sit and
Yeah.
wallow in it? So I didn't. Now there was some active processing that I
Mhm.
wasn't able to do of maybe some of how significant it was for me during that time because of my ability to move on, which I've since processed actively.
Yeah.
uh, but nevertheless, my ability to be able to see the situation for what it was and move on from it has always been, I think, a superpower of mine.
Amazing. And then to go back, like I'm curious for the men listening, when you say you went back and actively processed it, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for a little while after, if I watched football or if I attended a game, it would just felt like there's like a numb feeling
Yeah.
where I would just be there, but there'd be no emotion that would come over me in
Uh-huh.
any way. And it wasn't like oh, I'm just neutrally emotional right now. It's like there's something there that
Yeah.
that is blocking all emotion.
Yeah.
So going in, doing some regressive therapy type of work with myself and how I felt about it, how I felt about the whole situation, allowing myself to purge a lot of stored emotion associated with all of it. I mean, since I was 10 years old, I said I wanted to go to the NFL. So that's a long
It's a
time to
big
be
dream
all
for a long
in,
time.
bought in on something.
Hmm.
So taking the time to actively pursue, there's plant medicines that I pursued. There's very rigid therapy that I pursued, and a lot of just self uh, analyzing and going deeper into my own emotions that I've done as well. So I think it's as men, it's
Awesome.
incredibly important to do those things. We can dive into that a little deeper too if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And thank you for painting that picture, because I think, a lot of men I've worked with have this idea that, right, you're supposed to suck it up and you're supposed to just push it aside, and kind of like the way, there's a beauty to what you said in the beginning. Oh, I push through, and what else are we going to do? And we don't want to sit around and wallow in it, of course. At the same time, right, when you hit one of those numb spots, which fortunately you recognized, I think it can be challenging for men to dive in and say, all right, let me unearth this and let me feel more, and let me, let me go into the mess of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're open to it, I'd love to like touch on that a bit because
Yeah.
I think there's based off the changing times and the feminization of the world, there's a skewed perception of what it means to go in and experience some of that deeper emotional stuff that men have going on. I
Yeah.
think what's happening is men are hearing that and they're becoming more feminine, they're becoming more emotional. But if you ask me, the point of going deeper into your own emotional shit is not to become more emotional, but to actually become less.
Mm.
Because whether you believe it or not, the unprocessed emotion that is there is actually leading you and guiding you in ways that you're
Right.
not even aware of.
That's
So
powerful.
by
Yes.
right, so by you being able to go in and actively process this deeper stored emotion that you have inside of yourself that's preventing you from really getting what you want more of in
Yep.
your life,
Yep.
it allows you to naturally show up more stoic in situations, being able to deliver that moment what it really needs.
Yes.
So my best friend and I, we talk about the sad stoic, or the men that actively try to be stoic
Mm.
uh, without actively processing their deeper emotion to naturally become stoic.
Oh man, as a
And
woman, the feel of
yeah,
that is it's like in my body just gets all tense,
you,
and it's, yeah, I can't. Yeah.
yes, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You can feel that tension of suppression that can come from
Mhm.
a guy like that, or he just like butthole is just like all tight up. He's like,
Yeah, it's scary as a woman.
for sure. And so that's the significance, I believe, of emotional intelligence for a man and going deeper into our deeper emotional states and actively processing through it. It's to become naturally more stoic, more centered and grounded in yourself, where you
Yeah.
don't have to try
Yeah.
and where your essence just naturally holds it.
Yes. I love that. I love that. One of the things that I often work with men on is like, okay, right. If you come from a place, if we can help men get to that place of less shame, more self-love for all of those parts and emotions and whatever, right? Then there's no need to prove or defend, which goes back to that external validation. And I'm not sitting here having a conversation trying to prove to you that I'm okay because I'm feeling some sadness or I'm feeling some fear, but now I have to show you that I'm good enough or strong enough, right? Like that whole dynamic starts to dissolve where there's no need to prove or defend if you actually are centered in yourself and believe in yourself and, love those parts of yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can dive into the other elements of some of this validation stuff if you'd like to. I'd love to be
Yeah.
able to chime in on it,
Yeah.
because there is definitely that component to validation that men actively seek because of unprocessed emotion, 100%. And going
Mm,
in and actively doing that is what can allow for greater levels of being more detached from needing the validation,
yeah.
for sure. But I think another component of it as well is we are ridden in a society that glorifies being immediately gratified at every corner. So I
Mm,
can pull up a half naked girl on my phone and see her stripping, and I can immediately get gratification like I went out and pursued that same girl, right?
yeah.
Or I can go and I can order some shitty food from Uber Eats and I can immediately be gratified for a meal that's very tasty without having to actually go get it
Do anything, right? Yeah.
or right to go get it. Or I can just order something online real quick without having to go out to the store and get it. So, and on top of it, we're living in a time where women are constantly pursuing men or saying to men that, hey, you've done enough. Hey, just be proud of yourself. Hey, don't keep going. Don't keep pushing. Which I think is actually, if men don't understand that right, it can become complacent instead of
Mm,
actually just seeing as it is, which is
mhm.
just a kind gesture from a woman. It can cause issues, but that message is being projected out to masculinity all over the place. And
That
so there's a
men
lot.
don't have to, what was
Men
it like?
are inherently valuable, or we're valuable in and of ourselves. So
Uh-huh.
you
So
don't have to
don't,
push so hard. You don't
uh-huh.
have to keep going as hard.
Interesting.
Uh, yeah, but men don't have that inherent value like women do. So that's women projecting themselves onto men,
Right.
which
It could
actually
be
is
like an inherent value
counterproductive.
thing or a sense of, right. Like you were saying, maybe you said this before we started recording, like there is a way that men tend to, um, producing or accomplishing, right? That like there's something that feels powerful as a man.
Yeah, well, and that's how we actually become valuable, right?
Mm.
A woman in and of herself is valuable, but as men, we don't have any inherent value by
Hmm.
society. Like we don't. And so men being
Really?
told that's
Don't
actually
have inherent
absolutely
value. Huh.
no, men get tossed to the wayside all the time.
Yeah. I
Like
mean, that I
absolutely.
do
Like
believe is
a man
true.
that's not valuable for sure, but a woman for her to become valuable, there's very, very minimal effort that she
Well,
really has to do to become so. At
if
least for
she's
the
beautiful
majority of
or
men.
if she's a sexual object or if they're like, that's a tricky one in there too.
Uh, it it is, but it isn't because women can get by very well with being beautiful, but a man can't. A man has to be multidimensional to be
Interesting.
valuable in today's world.
Huh.
Like
Yeah. I mean,
I
there's
can't
so
be a
much in
good
there.
looking, yeah, like I can't be a good looking guy and have the opportunity to just get on yachts or to be exposed to the best quality woman in the world. Like that's not how it works. But a lot of women that are beautiful, for men, that is enough. Women's attraction is much more multidimensional,
Right.
whereas
Women's
men
attraction is
isn't.
much more multidimensional or
Right?
multidimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting, right? And then not all women are beautiful, right? It's like I don't walk through the world as I feel like I'm a kind of an average woman, right? And so it's like, right, there are other things that we have to do and create. So there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down in there, but I don't
Okay,
think that's really
but let
what's
me say
important.
this. It isn't what's most important, but I would disagree with you
Yeah.
saying that you're average. Like I would disagree. I would say you probably do have an incredible amount of selection.
Interesting.
You're probably just very choosy in who you decide to engage with. But I believe for
Right.
the majority of men that come across you, they would be like, okay, wow, she's beautiful, she's very attractive. So
So that's so
I
interesting too,
just
because then it goes back to how we
yeah,
internally feel about ourselves versus what
yeah,
might be someone's external perception, right? Because I don't have that perception of myself. And right, again, we could go this whole rabbit hole, but I think
yeah,
part of what we're talking about is okay, a man, as you're saying, produces or like has to do something in the world. Is it to get to be valuable to others or to feel valuable to himself or both?
both. I think it's important that we use evidence as men to
Yep.
justify feelings. And I think we live in a time where we're so disconnected from reality, where we're taught to be as men to feel valuable, but we can't lie to our subconscious,
Huh.
right? What provides value, where we can really feel valuable as men, is working towards something
Yeah.
and getting
Yeah.
progress in the pursuit of that.
Yeah.
So that's where it's incredibly detrimental to men to say that they have value or you are enough just in and of yourself, because we can't really, at a deeper level, lie to our subconscious as men. Right. So
Interesting.
if I haven't really done anything, I haven't really gone out and proved myself, I haven't went out and made the kill or pursued something. It's we know deep down that that's actually built off a lie.
Yeah. Which is interesting too, though, because I think there's subtlety in there where it's like there can be a false sense of I'm successful because I've generated money or built a company or something, right? Like there's real sense of value in pursuit, but then there's also where it can be twisted into, like you said in the beginning, an identity. Oh, I'm not good enough unless I have the identity of a successful man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of those guys that do have a lot of success, they're chasing it so they can one day give themselves permission. So their disconnect is that they're just still disconnected from they're disconnected from reality because they can't see the value they actually have, which is an issue that they'd have to work through,
Yeah.
right? So it's not that the pursuance of excellence is wrong in that regard, just those specific men that rely on performance solely
Yeah.
to feel good about themselves, then they can run into issues. But the issues
Right.
don't
Okay.
come
To
from
feel
the
good about
performance,
themselves. Yeah.
right?
Right.
But the issue comes from their inability to be connected to reality,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay. Say more about that.
It's never enough, right? So these guys that are pursuing at a really high level and they're having a lot of success, their problem isn't that they're pursuing success. The problem is that they're not actually able to see the success they've been able to create.
Uh-huh. Right. There's a
So
skewed
it's a skewed
internal
perception
reality.
of
Yeah.
themselves.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So they don't see themselves as that. And so for them, it's more about being able to work through a deeper level of why you're disconnected from reality and why you think that you have to keep doing more, but never catch the magic dragon. So the problem isn't that they're doing more. The problem is that they're not able to find the fulfillment for the more that they're doing.
Yes. Very well said.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think that's what I'm saying in society for men, it's being demonized, the pursuit and the going after at the highest level and really committing a man's full life to going after what he wants is wrong. But it's not if you can
Mm-mm.
actively feel the fulfillment that comes along with actively pursuing what you want at the highest level and
Right.
gaining progress in the pursuit of that.
Yes. Right. And becoming and evolving and growing and serving and all of that through the pursuit
Correct.
versus it's to get to that one goal so that then I know myself, or think of myself as someone who is X.
Yes, absolutely. And I can give a little personal anecdote to that
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. With me getting to the NFL
Yeah.
before I was told I'd never be able to play again, a feeling that came over me, a very overwhelming feeling that came over me, was like, this is it. This is what it feels like to accomplish my lifelong dream.
Oh, wow.
And so that also puzzled me a lot when I had that feeling,
Yeah.
which then it actually made it, I think that might have actually what made it a little easier for me to move on from it,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
seeing that and being confused by that.
Yeah.
Because it is very common for men to think that, well, if I one day just get this girl, if I one day get this job, then I'll finally give myself permission to feel somewhat worthy,
Right. Yep.
right? Um, but I think it's important for men to realize that it's never about getting there. It's about getting there, then having the next thing, and
Right.
the next thing, and the
Right.
next thing, and the
That's the
next thing.
trap.
It'll never be a thing. It'll always just be the next thing, and then you just do that until you die,
Yep.
right? So
Which
it's
is
not that
so
you
sad.
I think it's beautiful.
You
I,
do?
like, I, well, the fact that
Oh,
like,
okay. No, I just got, you were saying something totally different than I was thinking, which is the next
yeah,
thing, the
yeah,
next thing, the next thing is not enough, not enough, not enough. You're saying it differently, that actually it's, oh, here we are and let's celebrate this. And then there's the next thing to do or pursue.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
That part,
So as
I
men,
agree. That's beautiful.
yeah, yeah, that makes complete sense. So,
Yeah.
as men, being able to understand the process of pursuing and that we get fulfillment through going after. So, just because we know that that thing, accomplishing it, isn't going to bring us the world of what we think it's going to, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
we don't do it.
Yeah.
We still do it, but we just get there, and then we see another thing that we go after, and
Yes.
you just keep doing that, and not from
Not from a
a
needing to prove
chasing
yourself.
place, but
Uh-huh.
that's just what you do as a man. That's how you live your life. I think
Mm.
that's what leads to the most fulfillment as a man, is just actively going after things, conquering, and continually doing that process.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I like that. How we can, and there was that tricky moment too, where it's like we're both saying same words, totally different thing. One of them is from a place of not feeling worthy or not celebrating yourself. The other is doing the same exact thing, but having that sense of worth. Then it becomes a lifelong, enjoyment.
Yes, yes, or even it just the awareness of it, the
Yeah.
awareness that it's never going to be the thing. It'll just be a thing in the process of going after more things after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if I could take it back
That's what I was
to,
just going to say. Let's go back
yeah,
to,
full
yeah.
full circle to what we were talking about with the validation part.
Yes.
And the reason why I shared those things about how easy it is to be validated from all these different directions, we've actually become sedated and dependent on being immediately gratified or being immediately validated.
Yeah.
So if we can break the addiction to that, which requires us to step outside of the structure that society has created
Yeah.
and create a sense of lack, right? We can actually cut off those sources. So for example, if I go to my Instagram and I don't follow any half naked IG models, I don't have any on my Discover page. I don't
Okay.
have any. I could keep it completely gone and away from myself. So I'm a living example of this. If I get rid of the immediate gratification, so I take that away, so
Yeah.
I no longer can get my gratification from looking at a beautiful girl on Instagram.
Uh-huh.
Now there's something inside of me that says, well, now I maybe have to actually do something to go
Uh-huh.
get that beautiful girl, right? That now maybe I have to do something, but you have to sit in the tension of you not having it for a little bit, which doesn't feel good, right? You can slap yourself on the wrist and be like, oh, I'm not letting myself have this, but that's the point.
Uh-huh.
That's the point. Same thing with eating, right? If you spend a season where you stop going out to eat and you go to the grocery store and you only buy the essentials for yourself, you don't buy snacks, you
Mm-hmm.
don't buy any extra stuff, and you make it really simple,
Yep.
you starve yourself of the gratification outside of that.
Yep.
Okay. And so the more you can simplify things and get rid of these points of immediate gratification,
Yep.
the more stable and solidified you can become in yourself, because you're now relying and depending on yourself to have to be the person to go get and to become.
Right.
And that's where real confidence comes from, is the active process of doing what it takes to become something that you're proud of as a man.
Mm, I like that. Confident. Okay, say that again. The real act of confidence comes from doing something,
Uh,
the act of doing something that you're proud of.
yeah, of actively moving towards something based on your actions and then seeing progress towards that.
Yeah.
But if we're cutting off our ability to do that by getting all this immediate gratification, then of course I'm going to rely on external validation to be okay, because I have no center and foundation of confidence within myself.
Within yourself. Yes.
Correct. So if I cut off those sources of validation around me, where I make myself get up and I go buy something from the store instead of getting it on Amazon,
Yeah.
or I cut off the half naked web on Instagram, or I cut off my ability to get Uber Eats,
Yeah.
I'm actually having to go do something. And so then I'm being validated through my actions
Through
and
your
the steps that I'm
action.
taking to go get it.
Yep.
So then I can actually take credit for it, for getting the validation, right? I'm getting up, I'm going and doing it, I'm becoming the person I need to be to get validated. And that's where confidence comes from.
Mm.
You can't have confidence if you're not actively going out, becoming the person that you need to be to get what you want. And the
Interesting.
process of continually getting more and more of what you want through the work that you're putting in to go get it is
Uh-huh.
where real confidence is built. And that's why you can't fake it. Like you can try to fake it, but people that have it, no. So you can fake it to people that don't really have it.
Yeah.
But I can see right through it. I can see
Yeah.
right through it for men that have never actually done it,
Yeah.
and they make money off like a get rich quick thing. Like you can feel it. I'm sure you met men like that where they never
Yes.
earned it. Trust fund guy, for example,
Yeah.
you can feel the difference between him and a man that's sturdy and stable because of the rigidness that's been established inside of him because of the
Yes.
time, energy, and work he's put in to become the man that he is. You can
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And that's
agree.
where real confidence comes from. That's where you stop being, you know, uh, a, a weak, sedated child, and you can step into actually having confidence where you don't need to be validated through actively going out and pursuing and getting better
Oh
and
my
becoming
God.
it. You
Yeah.
can't bypass that process.
No, and I just love that you just said a weak sedated child, right? Because if we take the judgment or the fear that, someone's going to have their feelings hurt or whatever, it's like so much of what we are encouraged to be these days is a kind of weak sedated child, whether man or woman, right? Because of that instant
Yes.
gratification. And to how do we actually grow up and mature ourselves? And it takes maturity to navigate relationships, whether it's work relationships or romantic relationships. But if we're kind of acting like these immature children, we don't have what it takes, which then depletes our
Absolutely.
confidence, which then is a vicious cycle.
100%. And I want to say this too, Shane, is we live in a time where it is insanely difficult to actually have real confidence.
Yeah.
So there are no sources acting upon us that are would help us or in our favor to actually gain real confidence.
Mm,
Right. I as a woman can go on social media and be validated like this with a post of me with half my boobs hanging out. Right. Like there's nothing in society right now set up for people to actually have real confidence.
real confidence.
And I think that's important for us to understand in
Yeah.
that we have to become conscious
Yeah.
of what's happening and going on to be able to change.
Yeah.
Because if you just are in the flow of the way the world and how it's going, you will never actively have confidence.
Yes.
The act of going against the way the world's going is what will allow for confidence to be had in a man. If you're blindly listening to the government, if you're blindly listening to people that are in authoritative positions and not actually becoming conscious and asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? Is this really what's best for me? You're going to fall into this weak category. And
Mm,
it might suck, it might not suck, but the truth is that's just what you have to do.
mm,
And it does take effort and it does take energy, unless you want to just be at the mercy of society. And I think a lot of men don't. They want to be sovereign. They want to be able to feel powerful within themselves. They want to be able to be a good father and a good husband and can lead a dynamic in the way they need to,
yeah.
but society does not set us up for that.
No, it really doesn't. And I'm appreciating that you clearly have gone on a journey to actually discover for yourself what this is, how you cannot be asleep, how you can wake up to reality, like you said, and to be conscious in reality and to be, to feel valuable to yourself, even in reality.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else on the topic of external validation, or when you're working with your clients, how do you support them to shift from looking for that validation outside? Maybe you've already covered this, but let's just see if
Yeah.
anything different comes up in this question, right? To then really claiming it for themselves internally.
Yeah. So a lot of continual validation that men need can come from their own inability to do what they know they need to do. And that's why like men today are more anxiety ridden than ever. And it's not that anxiety is the problem, it's just that men have a very difficult time being able to go do the things they know they need to do.
Yeah.
And so what I actively do with my clients that have depended on that external validation is I help them get really, really clear about the things that they've been avoiding, the
Mm,
things they haven't been doing, the
yeah.
things they've been sweeping under the rug and putting into the closet.
Yeah.
and get them to a point where they're capable of doing those things, having those conversations. Whether it's things like calling the bank and resolving an issue that with a charge that they had. Like men won't even do that today. Like it's
Interesting.
like I don't want to call the bank because I don't want them to be upset, or I don't want to have a conflict. Like men are super afraid of conflict, right? Going into conflict head first, right? Handling the things they
Mm-hmm.
need to handle that they've been avoiding, so they can
Yeah.
actually build internal fortitude and confidence within themselves.
Yeah.
But if you forever avoid the responsibilities you have that you need to do as a man to go have the life that you really want and desire,
Yeah.
you're going to rely on the validation outside of yourself. So that's a really big one, is what are the things that you need to do that you've been avoiding,
Mm-hmm.
and you go do them. You can't get around that. There's not like a thing that you can read, or a meditation that you can do to bypass those things.
Yeah.
It's just what you have to do to gain internal confidence.
Yeah.
Um, Another one that comes up that I see very often is men are actively sharing their thoughts and ideas all over the place and getting gratification for it without actually going after it and doing it. So this kind of
Mm-hmm.
goes back to what I was talking about with cutting off the points of gratification and validation outside of yourself. I actively do this, so I'm an example of this. Everything that I talk about, I'm an example of
You're
as
living
well.
it. Yeah.
100%, absolutely. Um, but I don't share my ideas with people until I get them going and I know for sure they're happening.
Got it.
Right.
Like if
And
you're
so
in
a
the
lot of,
midst of creating something or envisioning something, you're waiting until it's
correct.
actually happening until you're talking about it.
Absolutely. Unless there's 100% necessary conversations that I have to have in the
Uh-huh.
construction of creating it.
Okay.
And I'm very intentional about those conversations, because that time when that idea is inside of you and it's
Yeah.
starting to grow,
Like
if you make it an
gestating.
external experience, yep, beautifully said.
Uh-huh.
If you're making it an external experience where you're throwing it out in all these different areas, that actually throws off your ability to maintain connection with God in that moment with that thing and that idea that's building inside of you.
Yeah.
So you have to selfishly hold it intentionally and prevent yourself from, I'd say, metaphorically blowing your load, right, all over people and keeping it inside. And now we could talk about, that's a whole other topic of conversation, but stop metaphorically blowing your load of your ideas all over people. Keep
Yeah.
them close to your heart. Let them build. Continue the conversation you have with God, which is the one, right? God put that idea in your heart in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't put it outward,
Yeah.
because that's a
Don't
quick way.
like dribble, right? Yeah. Like you said, don't blow your load. Don't like let it leak, right? Actually
Exactly. It's
harness the
leaking
power of it.
100%. And then that allows for greater clarity to emerge, and the absence of validation to emerge, where you still have the drive and desire to go after it,
Yes.
right? Because that's
So I
where drive and desire
appreciate your
comes from.
distinction too around, okay, if there are conversations to forward it, you don't have to be an island. You don't have to think, oh, should I have to do this all on my own? Right. That you can have some of those conversations too that actually enrich it or support it.
Correct. But if you're asking, or if you're telling mom your idea again and she shoots you down for the 50th time, which
Right.
happens a lot,
Yep.
you're being an idiot.
Yep.
Like, why would you keep doing that when someone is shooting you down? So what I just spoke about was preventing yourself from being validated before you actually put it into practice. So hold it tight, close to your heart, so you can maintain the connection with God, for the inspiration to continue to flow through you, to be able to still have the drive to
Yeah.
move towards it. If you validate yourself before you actually make progress towards making it, you'll kill your drive. The second part of it was, don't share with people if you know they're going to shoot you down for the idea.
Right.
Right. I know a lot of people, they'll ask their friend, the same friend, over and over again about an idea, and they'll get shot down. Or they'll tell family about it. They'll tell these different people about it, and then they'll get shot down.
Yeah.
And then that influences them in their ability to be able to go after the idea and
Yes.
after the thing that they want. So that's the other part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And to know who you are, like I often say to people, you can test out to see whether people are safe or whether people are supporters. And so you don't have to share the most vulnerable thing first, right? You share something and then you check and see, are they supportive? Do they try and talk me out of something? Do they try and, tell me that what I know is true for me is not true? Or are they actually the people you can really lean into who are going to lift you up no matter what and be there with you?
Yes, 100%. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Um, and then the final piece that I wanted to touch on with it is, which I think could probably be the most difficult part, is what's really going to create the change is being in the withdrawal
Mm.
space of the feelings that come up when you're intentionally not allowing yourself to receive that validation. So when you're going
Whew.
through a
Yeah.
period where you're going through that period where you aren't telling people about a new idea you have, and you feel the aloneness that comes up in that, right?
Right.
Where you're cutting off your ability to have uh, a bunch of sugar and food from restaurants, right? That little voice that comes up that gets upset at you,
Yeah.
and you have to sit in that voice.
Yeah.
Where the other voice comes up when you're not immediately getting validated through seeing a half naked girl on social media,
Yes.
right? There's that frustration of like, oh, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just pull it up? You can just get the validation. And so through giving yourself that permission to be in that, not succumb to those voices that emerge through you cutting off
Yep.
the immediate gratification, that's where the real gold is at.
Yes.
And
Agreed. That's the
that's when you
deep
can get
work.
to the truth of it. That's it. And that's
Yeah.
where you can get to the truth of it. Whereas how deep does this go? Is this deeper than society, or is this something actually there from a deeper point in my childhood? So,
Yes.
but you can't get there unless you allow yourself to be in the withdrawal phase
Yeah.
of it, and
Yeah.
that can be difficult. But that's what creates an uncommon man is uncommon men are really willing and able to go into their deeper sense of aloneness that
Yes.
emerges when you cut off validation. And if you can't do that, you'll never be a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You either do it or you don't. Like that's just you have to.
That's so
You can't bypass
powerful.
it.
No,
Yeah.
you can't bypass it. And I'm curious for you in those, I would call them deep, dark places, right? What is it
Yeah.
that you lean on or lean into, or how do you navigate your way through them?
Oh, you just surrender to them.
Mm.
You just surrender to them. I mean, I've done so many different things to go into my deeper sense of aloneness
Yeah.
because I am a very empathetic person by nature.
Yeah.
I am very connected to people by nature, and so I've had to do a lot in that
To
department
untangle
for
that.
myself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different things I could share and talk about. But one thing that I do is I actively go on international trips alone and cut off outside communication and sit with myself in those spaces. Now I'm
Wow.
doing some things too, but obviously the aloneness of being in a culture where you can't relate, being
Yeah.
around people that you can't speak the language,
Yeah.
that brings up a lot of aloneness.
Yeah.
And so I'll literally be by myself in that space. I'll maybe be in my room and just go through it. Like
Wow.
I'll just go through it. And I just surrender to all of it where I'm not getting out of it, but I'm
You're not
intentionally
trying
sitting
to
in it.
get out of it. Uh-huh.
Yep. And
You're
just
willing to
letting
feel the
myself
pain of it.
go through all of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's really odd because I'll do that and then it can be a lot. It can be a lot to experience.
Yeah.
And then the weirdest part about when I do it and I confront my own deeper sense of aloneness, when I get out into the world, I feel 10 times more sane.
Oh my God. And
That
free.
is and for absolutely. So
Yeah.
you have to be willing to go through the chaos of the complete cognitive dissonance of that
Yeah.
experience of
Yeah.
being in that alone. But I'm
Without
telling
making it
you,
mean something about you, right? Because if you get stuck in the mind in
yes.
those situations, you're going to make it mean, oh, I am actually not good enough. I am unworthy. I am,
Ooh,
right?
100%. And there is definitely an element of skill to it. I'm really glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because there definitely is an element of skill to it, which I'm sure maybe at a later time we could go into
Yeah.
where so that doesn't happen. But if you are able to master and understand the skill of allowing yourself to go deep into your aloneness so you can process that unprocessed emotion,
Yeah.
you will come out on the other side feeling more free, feeling more uh, certain in your ability to execute things without needing the validation of others,
Yeah.
and really more awake.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is you start to see the realities of the world when you're
Yeah.
able to build that solid foundation where you're no longer controlled by the deeper emotions that are guiding you.
I
And
love
there's
it.
so much power that emerges in that.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. I think one of my deepest values or my, kind of missions from spirit on this planet is to really wake up to the reality and to not be like you said, controlled or, have life dictated, right, by those expectations, by those identities. So thank you so much for doing the work and going deep yourself and supporting men to do the same.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. There's nothing more that lights me up more right now. Clearly, you can probably hear it in my voice,
Yeah.
than being able to let men hear this and see the truth of really all of this, because there are so many, going back to what we talked about, there are so many forces being imposed onto us that are giving us the wrong message and that are making us more weak.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to spread the message and to get it out there and to help as many men as I can in the process.
Love it. And where can men find more of you?
Instagram, official Kian, and I also have a blog that I have for only men. And I'm sure if you want, I can send you over
Yeah,
the
send
link
the
for
link.
that
We'll
if you
put
want to
it
put
in
in
the
the
show
show
notes.
notes.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word alive, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.